I have a receipt in my glove compartment that I cannot throw away. I have tried 3 times. I pick it up, I walk to the trash, and then something stops me. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to the feeling that throwing it away would make me responsible for whatever happens next. The address on that receipt is 347 Hollow Creek Road. I went there once, on a Thursday night in November, in the rain. I should not have gone. The customer who placed that order died 4 years before I delivered it, and last week they ordered again. I did not accept the order, but the app says I did, and my car icon on the map was moving toward that house. I was sitting completely still. My name is Marcus, and I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I am not someone who believes in ghosts. I was not someone who believed in ghosts. I want you to remember that as you listen to what I am about to tell you, because by the time I finish, I think you will understand why I now sleep with every light in my apartment turned on, and why I will never, for the rest of my life, make another late-night delivery.
At the time of this story, I was 26 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized town in Ohio called Delmore. Nothing special about Delmore. It's the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where the same 3 restaurants have been open for 30 years, and where nothing exciting ever really happens. I had been driving for QuickDash, a food delivery app, for about 8 months. It wasn't my dream job. I had dropped out of community college the year before, not because I was failing, but because I just couldn't figure out what I was supposed to be doing with my life. My mother called me every Sunday and asked if I had found a real job yet. I always told her I was working on it. The truth was, I liked driving. I liked the quiet of it, the radio, the road, the simple task of picking something up and dropping it off. Nobody asking me hard questions, nobody expecting anything from me except that I show up on time and ring the doorbell. I worked mostly evening shifts, usually from 4 in the afternoon until about 10 at night. The tips were decent. People who order food late tend to be generous because they feel guilty about it. On the night this happened, it was a Thursday in November. Cold, rainy. The kind of night where the streetlights reflect off the wet roads and everything looks like it's glowing and drowning at the same time. I was already thinking about heading home. I had done 9 deliveries that day, my back hurt, my car smelled like someone else's Chinese food. I was about to log off the app when the order came in. The app showed the pickup as a Chinese restaurant called Golden Palace, about 6 minutes from where I was parked. The drop-off address was 347 Hollow Creek Road. The estimated drive time to the drop-off was listed as 14 minutes. I didn't think anything of it at first. I accepted the order, drove to Golden Palace, picked up the bag, and headed out. It was when I turned onto Hollow Creek Road that something started to feel off. The street itself wasn't unusual at first. It was one of those semi-rural roads on the edge of town, where the houses get farther and farther apart the deeper you go. Older houses, big yards, tall trees that hang over the road like they're trying to touch each other from both sides. But the farther I drove down Hollow Creek Road, the more the houses disappeared. The trees got thicker, the road got narrower. My headlights were cutting through heavy rain and fog, and I was slowing down because I genuinely couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead of me. My GPS was still calculating. It kept saying in that calm, robotic voice, "Continue straight for 0.6 miles." I continued straight. And then the GPS said, "You have arrived at your destination," and I stopped the car and looked up. The house at 347 Hollow Creek Road was not what I expected. It was large, 2 stories, set back from the road behind a gravel driveway that had weeds growing up through the cracks. The paint on the outside was peeling in long, curling strips like skin after a bad sunburn. Every single window was dark. Not the kind of dark where someone has the lights off in one room, the kind of dark that there are no lights in the entire building, the kind of dark that seems thick, like it has weight to it. There was no porch light on. There was no car in the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment with the engine running and the wipers going back and forth, and I looked at that house, and I thought, this doesn't look like someone who just ordered Chinese food. I picked up my phone and checked the order details. The customer's name was listed as E. Voss. There was a phone number. I called it. It rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. No answer. I waited a moment, then tried again. Same thing. No answer. I looked at the bag of food sitting in my passenger seat. The receipt stapled to the front of it said the order was worth $32. Chicken fried rice, egg rolls, wonton soup. Someone had placed this order less than 40 minutes ago. I tried to think of a logical explanation. Maybe they fell asleep. Maybe they were in the shower. Maybe the phone was on silent. I grabbed the bag, pulled up my hood against the rain, and walked up the gravel driveway toward the front door. The gravel was loud under my feet. Every step crunched and shifted in a way that seemed too loud for the quiet around me. The rain was steady but soft, and there was something else, a stillness to this place that felt different from normal quiet. It felt like the absence of sound that happens when everything around you has decided to stop breathing. I reached the front door. There was a doorbell, a small white button set into the frame. I pressed it. I didn't hear it ring inside. I waited 10 seconds, then knocked. 3 firm knocks on the wooden door. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. Nothing. I stepped back and looked up at the second-floor windows, all dark. I looked at the ground floor windows on either side of the door, both dark. But as I stared at the window on the left side of the door, I thought I saw something shift behind the glass. Not like a light turning on, more like a shadow moving within the darkness, like something had been standing very still just inside that window and had just slightly changed position. I stood completely still in the rain, staring at that window. Nothing moved again. I took a breath and told myself it was my imagination, a curtain shifting, the reflection of my own headlights moving in the rain. I took out my phone and sent a message through the app to the customer. "Hi, I'm at your door with your delivery. Please come to the door or let me know if there's another entrance." I watched the screen. The message showed as delivered, and then, after about 15 seconds, it showed as read. Someone was looking at their phone inside that dark house. I looked back up at the door and waited. 30 seconds passed, a minute. The message stayed read, but there was no response. Nobody came to the door. I sent another message. "I'll have to mark this as undeliverable if I don't hear from you. Please come to the door." Read instantly this time. Still nothing. I stood there in the rain, feeling something I can only describe as deeply, specifically wrong. Not scared exactly, not yet, but the way you feel when you're walking down a street at night and you suddenly realize the footsteps you've been hearing behind you have been matching your rhythm exactly. That particular primitive feeling that something is not right here. I decided I was going to leave. I turned around and started walking back down the driveway toward my car. That's when I heard the door open behind me. I stopped walking. I didn't turn around immediately. I stood there with my back to the house, in the rain, and I listened. I heard the door open. I heard it creak slowly, like it hadn't been opened in a long time. Then I heard nothing. No footsteps, no voice, just the door open and silence behind me. I turned around.
There was a woman standing in the doorway. She looked to be in her mid-50s, thin, with long gray hair that hung loose around her face. She was wearing a pale yellow nightgown that went down to her ankles, no shoes, no coat. She was standing in an open doorway in November rain without a jacket, and she didn't seem to notice or care about the cold. She was looking directly at me. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't frowning. Her face was completely, perfectly still. No expression at all, just looking. I held up the bag. "Delivery for E. Voss?" She didn't answer immediately. She kept looking at me for what felt like a very long time, and then she said, "You can leave it on the step." Something about her voice made the hairs on my arms stand up. It wasn't threatening, it wasn't loud, it was the calmness of it that frightened me. She sounded like someone reading from a script, like she had been told to say exactly those words and was saying them without understanding them. I set the bag down on the step. I straightened up. She was still looking at me. "Have a good night," I said, because I didn't know what else to say, and she said, "You should leave now, before it gets darker." I looked around. It was already dark. It had been dark for hours. "It doesn't get darker than this," I said, and I meant it as a simple observation, a nothing comment, the kind of thing you say to fill silence. And she looked at me with that completely still face and said, "Yes, it does." Then she stepped back inside and closed the door. I walked very quickly back to my car. I sat down behind the wheel, I locked the doors, and I pulled up the app to mark the delivery as complete. My hands were shaking slightly. I told myself it was the cold. I started the engine, put the car in reverse, began backing down the driveway. And that's when my headlights swung across the side of the house, and I saw it. On the exterior wall of the house, partially hidden by the overgrowth of a dead shrub, was a wooden board nailed to the siding, the kind of board you'd see on a condemned property.
Or a foreclosure. Weather-beaten and gray, the paint nearly gone, but there were words still visible on it. I stopped the car. I stared at the board through my rain-covered windshield, wipers going, trying to read it. I rolled down my window, and in the sweep of my headlights, I read the words slowly. Condemned by order of Delmore County. Structure uninhabitable. Occupancy prohibited since June 2019. I sat very still. This house had been condemned for 4 years. No one was legally allowed to live here. No one was supposed to be here at all. But someone had just answered the door. I drove. I didn't back out slowly and carefully the way you're supposed to on a narrow gravel driveway. I reversed fast, swung out onto the road, and drove back toward town without stopping, without looking in my rearview mirror for the first full minute. When I finally did look in the rearview mirror, I saw nothing but dark road and rain. But here is the thing that I have not been able to explain, not to myself, not to anyone. When I got home that night, I opened the app to check my completed deliveries. The delivery to 347 Hollow Creek Road was listed as complete, $32. I had received a tip, $4. Someone had tipped me $4 through the app. The tip came through at 11:47 p.m., which was approximately 6 minutes after I had left that driveway. I stared at that tip notification for a long time. The next morning, I called Quick Dash Support and told them what had happened. I told them about the condemned house, about the woman, about the way she had spoken to me. I gave them the address. I asked them to look into the account. The support representative put me on hold for several minutes. When she came back, her voice had changed. It was quieter, more careful. She said that the account used to place the order, the account registered to E. Voss, had been flagged in their system.
I asked what that meant. She said she wasn't able to give me details about other customers' accounts, but she said I should not accept any further orders from that address and that the account had been deactivated. I asked when it had been deactivated. She paused, and then she said, "It was deactivated following a report from another driver about 8 months ago." 8 months ago. And yet, last night, that account had placed an order, and someone had used it to tip me. I asked her who the previous driver was, the one who had filed the report. I asked if I could speak with them. Another pause, longer this time. She said, "That driver is no longer active on our platform." I asked why. She said, "I'm not able to share that information. I'm sorry." I sat with that for a moment, and then I asked the question I'd been building toward without realizing it. I asked, "What is the name of the account holder, the full name?" She said, "I really shouldn't," and then she stopped, and there was a silence, and then she said, very quietly, as if she were reading something she didn't entirely understand, "The account is registered to Eleanor Voss, date of birth, March 14th, 1951. She paused again. "According to the notes on the account," she said, "Eleanor Voss was reported deceased in February 2019. I didn't say anything. "The account was supposed to be closed when the report came in. Our system shows it was deactivated, but somehow," another pause, "somehow the order was placed." I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my apartment and I thought about the woman in the yellow nightgown standing in the doorway of a condemned house. No shoes in the cold rain, a face with no expression, a voice too calm, too flat, like someone who had forgotten how to feel things. "You should leave now, before it gets darker." I thought about the condemned notice, June 2019, just a few months after Eleanor Voss died. I thought about what the house must have looked like when she was alive, if she had lived there for years, had eaten there, had turned on lights in those windows, had heard the creak of those floorboards beneath her feet, if that house was hers the way only a lifelong home can be yours. I thought about what it might mean if something, some part of a person, couldn't leave the place where they had always been, if grief and habit and years of ordinary living could anchor something to a location the way a nail is anchored to wood. And then I thought about the receipt. I thought about the order: chicken fried rice, egg rolls, wonton soup. Someone had chosen those specific items, had placed them in a cart, had typed in the address, had gone through the steps of an order, not randomly, deliberately. Had Eleanor Voss, in whatever she had become, simply been hungry? Or was she lonely? Or had she simply forgotten, somewhere in the part of her that still existed, that she was dead? I still have the receipt in my glove compartment. I haven't thrown it away. Last week, a new order came through the app, late at night, raining again. The pickup was from Golden Palace. The drop-off address was 347 Hollow Creek Road. The customer name was listed as E. Voss. I sat in my car and stared at the notification for a long time. Then I closed the app. I drove home, I locked my door, and I sat in my kitchen with every light in the apartment turned on. But here is the thing I haven't told anyone until now. Before I closed the app, in the 2 or 3 seconds that I was staring at that order notification, it was accepted. I didn't press accept. I didn't touch my screen. But the app showed the order as accepted. It showed my car icon on the map, moving toward Hollow Creek Road. I was sitting completely still. My phone showed me driving toward that house, and I was not moving at all. I turned off my phone. I haven't opened the app since. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that house at the end of that dark, narrow road. I think about whether the food ever arrived. I think about whether she is still there, standing just inside that dark window, watching the driveway, waiting. And I think about what she said to me as she stepped back through that door. Yes, it does. Because she was right. I understand now what she meant. There is a kind of darkness that has nothing to do with the absence of light. It is the darkness that lives inside certain places, inside certain losses, inside the spaces left behind by people who never fully let go. That darkness does get darker. And I think if I had stayed 1 minute longer that night, I would have seen exactly how dark it gets. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I left when I did. But sometimes I wonder about the driver who didn't, the one who filed that report 8 months ago, the one who is no longer active on the platform. I wonder where he is now. I wonder if he ever made it back to his car.